Alright, hi everyone, welcome back. This is Karthik, and today we're going to be continuing ahead and learning about a new programming language called JavaScript. So, JavaScript is a programming language that is widely used in the field of web development for writing front ends, back ends, and whatever else. It is extremely widely used in the field of web development, and it is also a very popular language. Most of you might have heard about it as well. And one more thing to note here is people might get confused with the naming convention, JavaScript, and then there is another popular programming language called as Java. However, there is no relation between Java and JavaScript other than the names being somewhat common. So JavaScript is basically a programming language for the web. So far what we have seen, let's have a recap. So far what we have seen is that we have HTML and then CSS. HTML gives us a structure of a web page, and then we can use CSS on that structure to stylize it and put it in a certain layout or whatever. But till now we haven't seen at anything that gives us logic, that gives us control over the web page, that allows us to write rules. For example, let's say a user presses this, then something should happen. So those kind of logic we have not written yet in our web development, and that is why JavaScript is extremely important. It allows us to write actual programmatic logic for our web pages. Now, if you're coming from languages such as C, C++, or even Java, if you know the basics, then JavaScript is actually pretty easy, at least the basic concepts such as variables, loops, conditionals, and stuff like that. But still, I'll be going over all of them just to show you guys. But before we head into that, first of all, let us understand like every programming language needs a compiler, right? We have GCC for C, and then we have Java C for Java, etc. So you might be wondering, okay, maybe I need to install a compiler for running my JavaScript code. Now you can do that through Node or NPM, but a more simpler way for someone who is starting out as a beginner is just to realize that almost all of us use a JavaScript compiler on our day-to-day basis, and that is nothing but our web browser. So basically all our web browsers such as Chrome, Firefox, etc. are basically just JavaScript compilers underneath. So okay, we've seen so far HTML and CSS. So to write proper JavaScript code, first let's create an index.html. Then if we type an exclamation mark, we'll get the boilerplate code in VS Code. And if we save it, now there are many ways to write JavaScript. One way is to just write it in a tag inside the HTML called as the script tag. So here we can write our JavaScript, although this I usually don't recommend. Instead, what I would recommend is in the same folder. So just open a folder wherever that you are writing your HTML page. Just type script.js. So make a new file called script.js, and then we'll link it here to the HTML page. So we'll again just the same script tag. We'll type a script tag, and unlike the style sheet, this is not in the head. This is actually at the body at the end. And then we'll write an attribute called src. And src will basically show us the path of where our JavaScript file lies. So it's just in the same folder. So /script.js, and we save it. So from here, we don't need to do anything with index.html. We can write all of our logic inside the script.js. Now, obviously, the first thing that you do in any programming language is to print a hello world. So how do you print in JavaScript? We use something known as console.log, and then we put in whatever string that we want to print. Let's say hello dash. Cool. Now we save it. Now how do we run this? I said your browser is basically a JavaScript compiler. So we just go to the folder wherever you have saved this. So index.html you might have saved somewhere. I've saved it here. And then I'll open it with any of my browsers. Let's say I open it here with Firefox. So I'm just opening the just plain HTML page which is linked to the JavaScript file. As you can see, nothing happens. It's just a blank page. But how do we view the output of the JavaScript file? So for that, we right click and click on inspect and go to console. It is a similar procedure in Google Chrome as well, and you can see here hello DevDash has been printed, the one that we have done here. Okay, so now that printing is done, let's move on to some basic concepts of any programming language that you learn. Variables in JavaScript are very simple. So in C or other languages you might have seen that we need to declare data types. However, in JavaScript, that's not required. The types are automatically inferred. So we can say let A is equal to hello. So this is a string. Then let B is equal to 2. Let C equal to 3 or 3.5, whatever. And then we can do console.log B into C, console.log A, right? And then if we just print this, we can see we get 7, 3.5 into 2, 7, and then we get another hello. So yeah, and also it is generally a good practice to terminate all your statements with a semicolon. However, even if you don't do that, it's fine, because the JavaScript compiler automatically puts the semicolons for you. But since we are learning for the first time, let's just go with the best practices. Another type of variable that you can declare is known as a const. So we declare it with the const keyword, and then const, let's say some variable, var is another keyword. Let's not worry about var right now. Let and const are the two ways that you can declare variables. So const, let's say k is equal to some 2. Now if I write k equal to 3, then this statement is incorrect because I cannot reassign a already constant variable. So if I save and refresh the page, I'm getting an error, invalid assignment to const k. Since this is a constant type, I cannot reassign it. So yeah, those are basically the simple types of variables. Then okay, I'll show you another way okay, we've seen printing, so we are basically printing output to a console. There is another way to print, or basically show your output, and that is basically to show your output directly in the HTML page. This is done through something known as the document object model. I will get into that later. However, for now, you can basically understand that this JavaScript logic code that we are writing here can be used to affect changes in the HTML page. So now that we have seen variables, let's say, okay, so let's remove these. Let's just write a new variable, let a equal to 2. Now, this is how we write conditionals. If a mod a equals 0, then console.log 0. Else if a mod 2 equals 0, console.log even. So it's basically I'm writing a simple else if, else if, and then else statement. Else console.log or. So I'm sure most of you will be will be pretty aware of conditional statements, but even though if you're not, let me just quickly go over what's happening here. So first we are declaring a variable a. If the variable a is equal to 0, so double equal to is for checking if it's equal to 0. If a equal to 0, then we'll print 0. Else if a mod 2 equal to 0, that means if a is an even number, then we'll print even. So if a is divided by 2 and the remainder is 0, it means that it's an even number, so we'll print even. Else if it's not an even number and it's not a 0, it has to be an odd number, so in the else part we'll put a console.log odd. So for a equal to 2, we should probably get the output as even, and yeah, we get that. Now if we change a to 3 and refresh, odd. And then if we change a to 0 and refresh, we get 0. Cool. So those are like basic conditionals. Now let's discuss about looping statements. Looping statements are also similar to languages such as C. We have for loops and while loops. So let's just print. I won't go too much in depth regarding loops, because loops you will anyways use as per your need wherever. So I won't go into complicated like problems discussing loops and stuff like that. I'll just show you the simple syntaxes, which is basically the same as any other language. Let a equal to 0. Let's print a up to 5. Okay, so this is how a while loop works. While a less than equal to 5, console.log a plus plus. So that should do it. And then now if we refresh our site, we get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it stops. So what is our loop doing here? First we are declaring a variable to 0. is 0 less than 5, less than or equal to 5? Yes. So we print 0 and then we increment it by 1. So now it becomes 1. And then this keeps on happening until a becomes greater than 5 and then the loop stops. The similar logic can be written in a for loop as well. So if we just remove this, we can write for let I equal to 0, I less than equal to 5, I plus plus, console.log I. And actually we don't need this a here because we are declaring it in the for loop itself. Okay. And now if we print this, again we get the same output. And I'm just refreshing the website here for people who are wondering what am I doing to get the output. I'm just refreshing the website here and then I'm getting the same output 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so now that looping is done, I want to go over one more type of a sort of like a data structure that you can use inside of JavaScript. This is basically like an array. So we can say let arr is equal to a 1 3 abcd and 5.5. So here we can see that arrays can hold any type of data in JavaScript. And then if you want to loop over this array, we can write for int I equals 0, I less than arr dot length, which gives us the length of this array, and then I plus plus, and then we do console. And already I'm making an error here. So this has to be let because I'm coming from knowledge of other programming languages where I write the data type, but we don't need to write the data type in JavaScript. So this is basically the indexes of the array, and then we can do console.log arr of I. And then if we refresh and run this, we get the various elements of the array. So that is a, 1, 3, abcd and 5.5. And we can see they are of different data types. All can be stored in the same array. Alright, so now that we've seen basic looping statements and arrays, let's go over how to write functions. So a function is basically like a box. You can imagine it as a box which takes in an input, performs an operation on that input and gives you some specified output. It returns some output value to you. So that is basically a function. Of course, many people already know what function is, coming from normal programming language knowledge such as C and stuff. And it is very similar here in JavaScript as well. So here, as I said, for variables, we don't declare the data type. And so that goes well for the function as well. So if we say function print hello, so we define the function keyword and then the name of the function. And then inside these curly braces, we'll write the logic. So let's say I can write console.log hello DevDash. That is the function. So now if I refresh this, nothing happens. That is because I've just declared a function here, but I haven't never called it. So I can do two things. I can call it here, print hello like this with a semicolon, and then this function will be called and the contents of it will be executed. So if I refresh this, I'll get hello DevDash. Or I can choose to not call it here. I can just refresh here. This console is not only for output, but it's also interactive. So I can come here and type what is the function name, print hello. So I can call the print hello function from here as well, and then I'll get the output hello DevDash. So this is just like a simple function. There are more complicated ones as well. Let's say function add a comma b. So here we have to pass two variables a comma b, and then this is where we see the keyword return. So the top function does not actually return any value, it's just printing some output to the console. But here we are taking a return value, return a plus b. So we are adding them and returning that output. And now let's say we store it const result equal to add of 5 comma 6, and then we do console.log of this result. Okay, so we are calling this function add with the values 5 and 6. So these 5 and 6 will be passed to the function add, and the function will return a plus b. So 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So 11 will be returned by this function, and this returned result will be stored in this const result variable. And then we are doing console.log. So we are just printing this to the console. So now we should be able to see the answer 11. So if I save this here and then refresh, 11. So we get the output. Of course, similar to like the print hello function, we can also call it directly from the console itself. So if I refresh it now, and then I call add 2, 3, 2, 3 or 4, whatever, and then enter, I get the output 5. So I can just directly call it from the console as well. Now in JavaScript, there are multiple ways to define functions. So instead of creating functions like this and writing a name for them, you can create an anonymous function. So a function and then store it inside of a variable. So to better explain this, let's say I delete all these functions. Let's say I create a function called, first let me create a variable called subtract. Okay, and now inside this I'm going to store a function definition. Function definition is basically this function, and here I don't need to specify a name for the function, just the parameters that it takes and then what it returns a minus b. Okay, so now I have a function which takes a comma b and returns a minus b, and that function definition is stored in the variable subtract. So instead of so this is the difference from other programming languages. I can store entire function inside of a variable. So now how do I call this function? This function clearly doesn't have a name, but we know that this entire function definition, a comma b and then return a minus b, the entire logic is stored in this variable subtract. So now I can call subtract of 5, 3, and then I just print it. I can store it in a variable and print it, but I'm just being lazy here, so I'll just print directly the result. So, and now if I refresh, I'm getting the answer 2. So what is this happening here? So I'm console logging the result from this function, subtract of 5, 3. Subtract is a variable, but it is storing a function definition. So therefore it also acts like previously how we have called a function with its name. Instead of that, we are calling the variable with the parameters 5, 3, since that variable holds a function. So now 5 and 3 are going here, and we return 5 minus 3, a minus b, that is 5 minus 3. We return 2 back here, and this 2 is being printed in console.log. Same way we can call this thing from here as well, as I've demonstrated so far. So subtract of 2, 2, and we will get a and we will get 0. So yeah, so that is, so we've seen one way. One way is the normal function with the function keyword and the name. Another way is this anonymous function where we store this function definition inside a variable. Then there is a third method to write a function in JavaScript. This is known as an arrow function. So here we don't even write the function keyword as well. We just directly write a specialized form of the function syntax. So let's say const mul, we'll write a multiplication function. So again, this is still a variable. In this variable now, we will store an anonymous function. So no name given for that function. But instead of writing the function keyword, we'll directly write the parameters a comma b. And then this syntax where we write is equal to and then a greater than symbol. So that it basically looks like an arrow mark, hence the name arrow function. And then if we open the curly braces, and then we can write return a into b. So this is another type of function. So now how do we call this? Same in the same way. Here we are just not writing the function keyword, and instead we are using this arrow function syntax. But it still works the same way as we have done previously. Since the function has no name and the function is stored in this mul variable, we just call it with mul of 2, 3, let's say. And I want to, okay, it's better if I console.log mul of 2, 3, and I should be getting 3 into 2, 6. So if I refresh this, yes, I'm getting 6. And I similarly, I can call it again from here. 5, 4, mul of 5, 4, we'll get 5 into 4, 20. So same thing is happening here. 2 and 3 variable holds a function, so 2 and 3 are being passed into the function, and the function is returning 2 into 3, 6, and we are console logging that 6 here. Cool. Alright, so now we've discussed a for loop and while loop. However, there is another type of looping that is actually possible, which is known as a for each loop, and this is specifically a function defined on the array objects. So let's say I type let arr is equal to, let's say I have an array of numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, it can be strings and array numbers, or it's a combination of various data types, but for now I'm just taking 5 numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now if I want to print all of these, of course I can do something like for let I equal to 0, I less than array.length I plus plus, and then console.log arr of I. I could do this and it will work. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But let's say I don't want to do this. I don't want to calculate the length and then loop and define this variable and stuff like that. So let's say I don't want to do this. First, let me define a function. And we'll write it in the arrow function syntax to get practice, because we anyways want to try out the arrow function syntax later on when we learn backend Node.js, Express, React. Everywhere we'll be using this arrow function a lot. So let's write it out in that syntax as well. So const print val equal to, it's an arrow function, and then it takes some p, and then we console.log that p. Cool. So now, alright, so now we can, to travel each of these elements, we can write arr dot for each, and then we can, for each of the value present in this array, we can define some function that can be run, and that whose value will be passed in. And let's say we define it as print val, and now if we run this, we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because that's what we are calling for each of the element 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We are calling the function print val. And let's just make it something different as well. 1 apple 3, 4, 5, and if we refresh, we can see 1 apple 3, 4, 5. So we are just calling for each of the element, we are calling the print val function, and the element is automatically being passed in here. Now instead of this, we can also write it directly here. That is the advantage with arrow functions. So we can write array.forEach. E is usually used to represent the element, and then we can write the arrow function inside here, console.log e, and then end it here. And then if we refresh, we will get the same output. But here we are not storing the function in a variable. We are just writing the function directly inside of the array.forEach. So that is another way of looping through an array. Okay, so we'll cover a few more concepts in JavaScript, and then we can move towards the other topics such as React, Node, Express, and all the exciting stuff basically. So, but before that, a key concept to understand in JavaScript is the object type. So object is, you can define an object as a collection of some values, some attributes, and then some methods, that is some functions defined on that object. So let's say I have some const, some person, this is some variable, and this I'm calling it as an object. The object is usually represented with the curly braces. So I'm giving the person a name. Name is like a variable, so it's an attribute. Let's say it's my name, and then our attributes are defined with attribute name, and then colon, and then the value. So similarly, I want to give another attribute. Let's say age, colon 19. So that's my age. And let's say I want to write a function as well. Let's say greet is a function that I want to write. So I'll type greet, and then we've seen just now how to define an arrow function. So we'll write greet like this, and then we can write console.log hello plus person.name. So this plus will nothing, it will do nothing but concatenate. So basically it will take hello, and then it will take Karthik and put it here, and then print it as one big string. So this is our person object. Now how do we access the variables inside this? Or it's better to say, what do you say? It's better to say these are attributes and the methods instead of saying variables and functions. Inside of an object, we refer to these values as attributes and this as methods. So how do we access them? Well, we do through something known as the dot notation. So person.name will give us this name, person.age will give us the age, and person.greet will run this function. Now we can print all of these here in the JavaScript file, although a better way to learn it would be to just directly refresh it here in the browser and access one of these. So first of all, we can see person, yes, there is an object called person. It has the following name attribute, age attribute, and then a greet method. So let's say if I want the name, so I'll type person.name, enter, I get the name value. Let's say person.age, I get the age value. And then let's say person.greet, I get back a function. So it's technically not an attribute. So I need to call it with the simple bracket. So person.greet, and if I call it now like this, then it will run and give me the output, which is hello Karthik. So it is taking the hello and then keep taking the person's name, concatenating it into a string, and printing it. Now you might have noticed this extra line here. This is called undefined. Why are we getting this undefined? Well, that is because our function is technically not returning anything. Instead, it's just console logging. What if instead of console log, I store this in some variable? So let s is equal to hello plus person name. So this is some string, and then now I'm returning that s. So now if I refresh and type here person.greet and run it, I'm directly getting back a full string hello Karthik, and there's no undefined return type because the string itself is the return type. So instead of console logging, I'm returning this s. Cool. So that is basically like a small intro towards objects. Of course, it can be studied about in more detail, and so as all the other concepts in JavaScript as well. This was just like a quick overview to the programmatic part of JavaScript. Now, if you do want further reading, further resources, I'd highly recommend you go to something like javascript.info. This is a little bit more expansive in the sense that it covers too many things in too much of depth. But if you do have a lot of time, you can go for this. So yeah, you could do that. Or if you want to just simply, if you're stuck somewhere, and to simply look up W3 Schools, as always, as we've seen for HTML and CSS. W3 Schools is always a great resource. So we can just go to W3 Schools, JavaScript, and then you get a lot of these. So JS comments, JS operators, let, const, assignments, functions, etc. So whatever we have discussed here in a little bit more detail, or if you forget the syntax, you can always refer to places like W3 Schools. But if you do want to learn in depth, I'd still highly recommend going to javascript.info. And of course, MDN is always there.